Jacob Wren was used to silence. Night shifts suited him. No supervisors, no chatter, just routine. The facility he watched over, Ordnance Storage 7A, had been shut down nearly a decade ago. It was owned by a defense contractor that went bankrupt and vanished after a string of shady investigations. Now the place was empty, or it was supposed to be. His job was simple: monitor 3 cameras, all fixed angle and low quality, walk the perimeter every 2 hours, and report in via an automated phone check-in system. The company didn't even have an HR department anymore. His checks came through a faceless payroll service. The money was good, and Jacob didn't ask questions. But he began to notice things, subtle things, like the hallway on the second sublevel. It was marked as bricked off. Floor plans showed solid concrete where an old access tunnel used to be. But on the monitors, camera 2 flickered. Sometimes it showed just that wall. Sometimes it showed a door. A rusted steel door with no handle. The first time he saw it, Jacob thought it was a glitch. But the door kept reappearing. And on 2 nights, the feed showed movement, shadows that slid across the floor like something pacing inside. He filed reports. No one responded. He tried emailing the listed support contact. The message bounced. One night at 3:13 a.m., the phone rang. That was unusual. The landline never rang. He answered. Static, then a whisper. Not from the phone, from the hallway outside the security room. He grabbed his flashlight and checked the corridor. Nothing. The motion lights didn't trigger. But when he returned to the monitors, the camera 2 feed was frozen on a new frame. The door was open. Darkness filled the threshold. Jacob leaned in. He could almost see a face, not quite human, too long, eyes too wide apart. Its skin was wrong, veined and uneven like melted wax. And then the feed cut out. That night he couldn't sleep, and when he returned the next evening, he found his backup flashlight, the one he always left in the locker, melted. The casing was warped like it had been left on a stovetop. There was no explanation. The building wasn't heated. 2 nights later, the door reappeared again on camera 2. This time, Jacob descended into the sublevels himself. The stairwell to B2 was colder than usual. Every bulb hummed with static. His boots echoed differently. When he reached the corridor, he saw it. There was no wall. There had never been one. The rusted metal door was there, just like the feed showed, and it was slightly ajar. Inside was a small room, gray, square, empty, save for a chair and a security monitor that faced the wall. Jacob stepped in. The door slammed shut behind him, and on the monitor, he saw himself, sitting in the security room upstairs, still, unmoving, watching the screen. He reached for the door, but there was no handle, no seam, just smooth concrete. The monitor flickered again. Now he saw a new figure in the feed. It stood behind the seated Jacob, but the Jacob on the monitor didn't move, didn't react. Then slowly the camera zoomed in, as if someone was adjusting it manually. The figure was taller than a man, thin, wrapped in some dark material that moved like it was alive. Its head tilted as it leaned close to the back of Jacob's neck. In real life, Jacob felt a breath on his collar, but no one was there. He screamed, kicked, slammed the walls until his hands bled. No door, no exit, no light, only the screen and the endless loop of himself, still watching. He woke up the next evening, in the security room, alone. At first he thought it was a nightmare, until he noticed the time, 3:13 a.m., and the monitor for camera 2 was gone. Just a black frame. No hallway, no wall, no door. But from the duct behind his desk, a whisper. Shift never ends. Lena took the job a month later. She was young, skeptical, and desperate. The perfect candidate. The supervisor barely gave instructions, just a warning. Don't waste time on broken cameras. And if you hear voices in the vents, don't answer. On her third night, the screen flickered. Camera 2 was back, just for a moment. She saw Jacob, standing in the hallway, waving. Behind him, a door. Then the feed froze. The room went dark. And in the reflection on the monitor, Lena saw someone standing behind her. not herself. They found the building abandoned again. This time, no monitors worked. The entire circuit board was scorched. The backup drive contained one file, a loop of the hallway, a figure sitting in a chair. Still, silent, and every 13 seconds a voice. Observer transferred. Weeks passed, the world forgot the building, the job posting stopped. But the feed, it continues, not in wires, not in screens. Now it lives in eyes. Every monitor you stare into too long might be staring back. So next time you're alone at night and your screen flickers for no reason, don't check the feed, don't turn around, and whatever you do, never answer the whisper. Observation complete. Awaiting next candidate. Under Watchman was not the kind of man who spooked easily. A 30-year veteran of night shifts, he had seen everything from burglars with knives to rats the size of cats. Security work was boring, but boredom paid his rent. So when he was offered a solo position watching over the recently decommissioned Marrowgate Tower, he didn't hesitate. The building had been a government research center in the 80s, something to do with sleep studies, he'd heard, before they shut it down quietly in the early 2000s. Rumors swirled, as they always did, about unethical tests, staff who disappeared, even the occasional mention of subject containment breaches. But Ray didn't believe in stories. He believed in locked doors and working cameras. The first few nights were uneventful. The building was cold and lifeless, the power grid barely held together. The elevators didn't work, and most of the floors were dark. Cameras dotted every hallway, and most were functional, if glitchy. Ray spent his shifts sipping lukewarm coffee in the security office on floor 3, scanning monitors, listening to the mechanical hum of the building, trying to breathe. But on the 5th night, things began to change. At 2:47 a.m., camera 12, which monitored the 9th floor hallway, glitched. A brief static burst, then the image cut to black. Ray frowned and tapped the screen. 10 seconds later, the feed returned. Someone was standing in the hallway. No movement, no sound, just the back of a figure facing the sealed double doors of room 914. Ray's stomach twisted. There was no one else in the building. No staff, no scheduled maintenance. He toggled other cameras on that floor. Nothing. Just the 9th floor hallway, frozen in time, that lone figure standing eerily still. He grabbed his flashlight, keys, and radio. The elevator didn't work. He'd have to take the stairs. As he ascended, the building began to feel different. The hum was gone. So was the power on most floors. The lights flickered in pulses like a heartbeat, and the air grew heavier, humid almost, like a storm had sunk its teeth into the foundation. Each landing seemed darker than the last. By the time he reached floor 9, his breathing was shallow. The flashlight cut a tight beam ahead, illuminating warped carpet and shattered ceiling panels. The hallway ahead was longer than it should have been. Much longer. Room 914, once midway down the corridor, now felt miles away, and the figure was gone. Ray moved forward, boots sinking slightly into the old carpet. He passed room 902, then 904, then 906. At 908, his flashlight flickered. A cold gust of air brushed his cheek. He stopped. Something moved behind him. Quick, small, crawling. He spun around. Nothing, but the door to room 902 was ajar. That door had been welded shut last year during asbestos cleanup. He remembered reading the report. He stepped back, nearly stumbling into room 910. The door was wide open. A child's toy, an old wooden top, spun slowly in the center of the room. He hadn't heard it spinning. He hadn't seen it spin. It was just spinning. He turned back to the hallway. The door to room 914 was now open, and inside was darkness, pure, waiting darkness. His flashlight beam trembled as he stepped closer. The inside of the room was colder, too cold. The walls were covered in paper, dozens of pages, all identical. Each one had his face printed on it, a still frame from the security feed. In each picture, he was sitting at his desk, alone. In the final image, a shadow stood behind him. He turned, no one. He backed out of the room, heart hammering. The hallway was gone. In its place, a long tunnel, Dirt walls, no lights, no signs of construction. It stretched forward into black, and Ray's radio hissed alive. Subject awake, initiating re-entry sequence. His ears rang, the floor buckled. A deep, hollow sound echoed beneath him, then whispering. Not one voice, hundreds, layered, chanting his name, chanting numbers. 944, 944, 940. He ran. The tunnel bent in impossible directions. Up became sideways. Walls pulsed like lungs. He tripped, fell. His flashlight shattered. In the dark, something touched his hand. It was cold. It gripped. He screamed. He woke into the security office, alone. Lights buzzing, coffee lukewarm. The clock read 2:46 a.m. He checked the monitors. Camera 12 blinked. The hallway on floor 9, the back of a figure, staring at room 914. Again. The phone rang. He picked it up. No voice, just breathing, his own. Ray froze with the phone still pressed to his ear. His own breathing echoed back at him, distorted like it had traveled through miles of wire and static before returning. Then, a second breath. Not his. Shallow. Wet. As if it were inside the phone line. As if it were inside the walls. He dropped the receiver. The monitors all blinked. Every feed now showed the same hallway, the one outside room 914. But the figure had turned. It was facing the camera. No face. Just a blur, like someone had smeared its features with static and ash. But the worst part? It was wearing his uniform. Ray backed away from the screens, heart pounding. One by one, the cameras began to short. Feed 9, feed 10, feed 5, until only camera 3, the security room feed, remained. And on it, he could see himself, standing there, alone, until a shadow stepped into frame behind him. Not on the monitor, in the room. The lights died. A whisper echoed in the dark. We never left. Ray's scream never made it outside the building. The Chronol Tower was found locked the next morning, coffee still warm, flashlight shattered, no sign of Ray Locke. Camera 12 shows the 9th floor hallway every night at 2:47 a.m. Sometimes there's no one there. Sometimes there's a figure, and on rare nights, it turns around and stares directly into the lens, wearing his uniform, waiting. Weeks passed. The building remained sealed, but the feeds never stopped. Cronus Security eventually replaced Ray. A new guard, Martin, younger, skeptical, started his first night with a clipboard, a half-charged walkie, and a cocky grin. At 2:47 a.m., camera 12 blinked. The figure was there. Same hallway, same stance. Back turned. Room 914. The elevator refused to go to the 9th floor. Every button worked but that one. So he took the stairs. When Martin reached the 9th floor, the lights flickered violently. He stepped into the hallway. Longer than it should have been. The same damp air. Same static feeling crawling across his skin. Room 914's door stood open. Inside, photographs, dozens. Not of Ray, not of Martin. Photos of you, reading this now, watching the screen. Your reflection twitches, just slightly. The hallway behind you is darker than it was a second ago. You don't remember leaving the door open, do you? From somewhere far off, deep in static. Shift begins now. The night shift at Evergrove Zoo was supposed to be quiet. For Jordan Keller, it was a dream job. Getting paid to walk around with a flashlight, listen to podcasts, and occasionally yell at drunk teens hopping fences. The zoo shut down at 8 p.m., and from then until 6 in the morning, the grounds were his. 12 hours of still cages, locked gates, and darkness so thick it felt like fog you could chew. At least, that's what it had been the first week. Until the sounds began. It started with the lions. They were usually lazy after dark, stretched across their artificial savanna like purring statues. But one night as Jordan passed enclosure 7A, he heard growling, low and rhythmic. Not the angry kind, not even the warning kind. This was syncopated, almost as if they were talking. He stopped, clicked off his flashlight, and crouched behind a service shed just opposite the fence. A full moon hung low, casting harsh shadows across the enclosure. Two lions sat facing each other, mouths moving. Not roaring, not snarling, just moving. Jordan felt a chill run down his spine. He leaned closer, squinted. They weren't just growling, they were making sounds. Deep, guttural vowels that almost sounded like words. Then one of the lions suddenly turned its massive head. Right at him. He turned and walked quickly back to the staff lounge, not running, not yet, but with his hand tight on his flashlight like it was a weapon. He didn't tell anyone. 2 nights later, the peacocks screamed. Everyone said peacocks screamed, but Jordan had never heard them like that. Frantic, overlapping, echoing calls that ricocheted across the zoo like car alarms in hell. They didn't stop for 10 minutes. When he got to their area, the lights above the enclosure flickered, then died. He saw nothing, except the open gate. He locked it, double-checked the animals, and radioed in a possible wind trip. But it wasn't windy, not even a breeze. Then there were the prints, massive bird-like three-toed prints along the concrete paths between enclosures. Too big for the flamingos, too light to be from any known exhibit. And every time he followed them, they led in loops, circles around service doors, into corners with no exits. Once they stopped right in front of his locker. The next night, they were on the ceiling of the staff kitchen. Jordan started checking the cameras obsessively. That's when he noticed the blinks. Every few hours, just for a second, the zoo's internal surveillance would blink, a single frame missing from the time-stamped feed. A black screen, and then back to normal. He would have ignored it, blamed faulty equipment, if not for what followed every blink. Movement, subtle, but real. The rhino would be lying down. Blink, then standing. The bear would be in the cave. Blink, then at the gate. The old chimpanzee would be, I see, the one who barely moved anymore, would be pressed against the glass, staring directly into the camera. No explanation, no rewinds, no sound. Just movement when no one was watching. Jordan confronted the curator, an older man named Rick, who'd been with Evergrove for 30 years. When Jordan explained the things he'd seen, Rick went pale. He didn't laugh. He didn't ask if Jordan was drunk. He just said, "Don't look too long, that's how they notice." Jordan asked who they were. Rick only said, "You'll know, you already do." Then he handed Jordan a key, one that opened a door in the north wing, a part of the zoo no longer in use. If it gets worse, go there. But only once, and only when you're sure. The next 3 nights were a slow descent into madness. The wolves howled in Morse code. The parrots repeated his name, in his voice. The glass on the reptile cages fogged up with messages like, "Don't turn around," and "Eyes open," equals "Door closed." He tried not to believe it. He tried to brush it off as lack of sleep, stress, maybe something in the zoo's air filtration. But then came the zebra. One of them escaped. At least, that's what the cameras showed. Blink. The pen was empty. Jordan found it 30 minutes later, standing at the center of the zoo's old amphitheater, under the moonlight. It was facing the wrong direction. Its legs bent the wrong way. Its eyes were missing, just empty sockets, yet it still looked at him. It opened its mouth and spoke. They only move when you don't. Jordan ran. He didn't stop until he reached the north wing. The key Rick gave him opened a rusted door behind a supply closet. Inside, a bare, windowless room. In the center, a folding chair and an old CRT monitor. On the screen was himself, standing outside the room, staring at the door. He turned around. No one there. The screen blinked. Now he was inside the room. On the screen. Sitting in the chair, he looked down. His hands were on his knees. Same position. He raised his hand. The man on the screen didn't move. Then it smiled. Jordan tried not to sleep anymore. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw cages, yawning open, reaching endlessly into shadow. And behind them, something watching. Not with eyes, but with presence. With intent. He stopped going home. He slept in the break room, surviving on vending machine snacks and stale coffee. He stopped trusting mirrors. He stopped blinking. He left himself notes, dozens of them, taped to monitors, doors, and even inside his own shoes. I'm still me. If you didn't see it move, it didn't move. Keep watching, keep watching, keep watching. But the cameras started lying. One night at 2:47 a.m., camera 6 showed a tiger pacing back and forth, but the tiger had been dead for weeks, euthanized after illness. The enclosure was empty. Another feed, camera 4, showed Jordan standing by the lemur exhibit, but he was sitting in the break room. He checked. Twice. Camera 2 showed someone standing at his locker. Same height, same uniform, head down, hands clenched. Jordan ran to the locker room. No one there, except the locker was open. His lock had been melted. Inside, a small, wet sphere, a human eye, still blinking. He threw it across the room and ran. He didn't return to the office. He started patrolling only by instinct. No lights, no monitors. He walked the zoo in darkness, using sound and smell to guide him. Because somehow he knew the watchers had moved into the system. The screens no longer protected him. They were part of it. 3 days later, the company hired someone new, a fresh night guard named Emily. Her first shift went smoothly. The second shift, she heard a voice calling her name from the owl enclosure. The third shift, she noticed the monitors flickering every 13 seconds. And on the fourth shift, she saw something deeply wrong. Camera 1 showed her in the control room. But she wasn't sitting, she was standing, smiling, not blinking. The zoo closed soon after. Official reason? Structural renovations. Real reason? Every guard stopped reporting in. Visitors began saying they saw animals that weren't listed anywhere, or that the same animal was in 3 enclosures at once. The camera feeds now show empty paths, but every so often one will blink. And just for a second, you can see someone in a zoo uniform standing perfectly still just outside the lion's gate, watching, always watching. They only move when you're not watching, but now you're part of the zoo too. Did you enjoy the story? Then don't forget to subscribe for more chilling tales. Turn on notifications if you're not afraid of what might whisper through them. And drop a comment. Let me know what part got under your skin the most. And if you felt like someone was reading it with you, that's probably nothing. Probably.